Yes, we are recording. I'm going to have to start this off again. Bloody hell.
Sorry, I just got really confused.
I hit record like hours ago, man.
Did you actually? I didn't even notice
I hit record
you.
when we talked about Black Eyed Peas because I figured like we'll get a little bit of chatter, that we can add in the podcast before the episode.
I didn't even think you wanted to.
Because you know me, I always put
pre
stuff in.
I didn't think you'd want to chatter about the Black Eyed Peas.
I don't care. We could put whatever in.
Okay.
All
so
right.
About a conversation we had last week.
We're not in that part yet. Look. Let me introduce the show, who we are, what we do, because that's what shows do. And remember, you have to plug at the end too, like plug what our Instagram, all that sort of thing.
All right.
You're listening to Alternating with Erik. I am Connor. I am a musician and a bit of an audiophile and sound engineer sort of type. And with me, as always, my Russian martial artist friend.
I'm Erik, and other than Russian martial arts, I do enjoy playing games in my spare time and also thinking about how to grill Connor every time he makes fun of me.
And since Erik is a martial artist, we are... we're just changing things up in general. So if you've been listening to Alternating with Erik since our very first episode, which was called Alternating Slothcast, and then we changed the name. Yeah, we're rebranding a little bit again, except don't look at me like that.
By rebranding, he means we're trying something new.
We're trying something new. So we still might do anime and manga stuff from time to time, but we're going to alternate from topic to topic. You see what I did there?
Yeah, we're still going to deal with these puns.
Cringy puns, yes.
Yeah, cringy puns.
This is my humor, man.
Have I ever mentioned to anyone on this podcast that I hate puns?
All right, well, that I can't think of a pun now. and we're recording in Erik's new house, so let me know if there's any echo issues, anything like that. But
also, I'm not going to tell anyone my new house address, and Connor, do not tell anyone my new house address.
123 Fake Street.
That works.
All right. So as I was saying though, we're going to be doing basically we're going to just be doing one topic mostly every week, one sort of thing every week. So we might do like a martial art, a martial artist, a movie series, a director, something like that. We're not going to do like a manga and anime review. We're not doing that format anymore. We're just going to switch it up. It's going to be a number of different geeky things. Since Erik is a martial artist, we're going to finally just actually talk about martial arts and not try and figure out how we can sort of incorporate it with anime. We may talk about examples with it, though, like we may talk about anime examples of it being shown in anime, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But this week, we have a special show for you guys because we're going to be talking about why Bruce Lee is special. But first, as we always do, how has your week been, Erik?
Well, how has my week been? Well, I guess let's go into anime manga-wise. I've managed to almost finish up watching Kimetsu no Yaiba, or Demon Slayer. So that's probably the first anime series I've mentioned that I managed to finish.
Yeah, and you're watching the new hips show that all the kids are watching.
Oh, well, it's... As we've discussed previously, I really liked it because it's made by Studio Ufotable, who've been involved with shows like Fate Zero, and what was the other one? Oh, I forgot about the other one. But it was still in the Fate universe. But the great thing about what Ufotable does is that the visuals they have and the animations are just delightful, and it's the same with Kimetsu no Yaiba. I'm just going to call it Demon Slayer. That's the actual thing. So I really enjoyed watching it, especially since they incorporated the art, I guess the old style Japanese art into some of the attacks and some of the, I guess just the overall style of the series. And one other thing I've mentioned to Connor is that despite how shonen-ish the show is, and I mean it's really shonen-ish, there's the humor is very wholesome because there's no humor where it's quite
perverted.
Pretty much. There's like no perverted humor in it at all. It's just wholesome humor with, our main character.
Fun for the whole family.
Yeah, and his two sidekicks. One guy is a cowardly little midget.
Mm-hmm.
The other guy wears a boar mask and is just completely nuts. Yeah. But it is an entertaining show to watch. Otherwise, I have just been scrolling through manga after manga after manga. One of the ones I'm reading, it's only like 3 chapters, but it's a time traveling manga about a kid who, I don't know, he has some special condition, but it's one that allows him to travel back in time to basically be on the deck of the Yamato, the IGN Yamato.
I think I've heard of this. Is this called Japan or something?
No, it's something else.
I'm thinking it's something else.
It's rather interesting, although the translations are a bit crap. But it's rather interesting because he travels back in time and meets with the one Japanese soldier that can see him.
Yeah.
And so he's like trying to get his bearings and trying to understand, is he really there? Is all this actually happening? And just kind of the aspects and the secrecy around the Yamato during this time. And I also love it because it's the Yamato, the biggest and heaviest battleship in history to be built.
I realized as well, we haven't done a podcast since a long time. We haven't been since Christmas or New Year's. So we should probably talk about, what did you do over Christmas and New Year's actually?
Let's see, hang out with the family, trying to prevent them from killing each other, the usual. What about you?
So I was also family. I had a wedding and...
Oh, yeah, you showed me a picture of that wedding.
Yeah.
That was
times.
so...
A lot of drunk people.
A drunken Irish wedding?
Yeah, it's the best way
was
to describe it.
Connor's drunken Irish wedding?
Not my wedding. It was my auntie's wedding, to be more exact.
Still, your family's wedding. The following some roots down the line.
Yeah.
I'm assuming. I know you told me your mother is from... What is it? The central part of London.
Yeah. She's from London. I'm from Watford, which is a little bit out of London.
How far out of it is it?
I need a map. I can't remember at the moment, but I know it's out of London.
Actually, I'm not going to make you do that because I've seen the map of London.
It's Hertfordshire.
Massive.
It's Hertfordshire, Watford, if people want to know.
Yeah.
It's where Anthony Joshua, the famous boxer, is from.
Seriously?
Yeah, not kidding.
Nice.
From the same place. So.
Nice. Did you text them or message them and say, "Hey, I'm from your hometown, buddy"?
Hi, I'm from your hometown. I do a podcast. Can you come on and talk about stuff with us?
Hey, could help us.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, you know what we'll do? Why Anthony Joshua is special. Which, by the way, that's the format for these episodes now. It'll be why thing is special. And that'll be it. No. So if you see something is special, that's basically what it's going to be.
Pretty much.
I'm not gonna do the wacky titles like I did before, where it was one hell of a podcast, or do Barry as best girl, Eric's least favorite title.
Oh, I don't understand how you.
Hey, it's one of our most listened podcasts, so I can't.
Is it
hate
actually?
I'm not kidding. It's one of the top ones. Like the Rose at Versailles one's got a lot of listens. So.
But the Dewberry is Best Girl podcast is the one that's most listened to.
Both of them are. Both the both of them are like pretty high up. Both the Rose. I don't even remember what the second one's called.
I don't know either.
I think one of them is Dewberry's Best Girl, and then one of them I think was to do with the other favorite character that we had.
Oh no! The other podcast was you referencing something. I can't remember what it was exactly.
I think it was like the revolution is about to begin.
That's the one.
Which I didn't take it from Rose of Versailles. I took that from a Sly and the Family Stone song. Yeah, I threw in a musical reference in our fucking anime podcast.
was it the reference?
Yeah.
I thought you said something different.
It's from a Sly and the Family Stone. It's a song called like The Revolution has started. It's either them or it's It's either them or it's Funkadelic. It's one of those bands. But yeah, I put a music reference in our anime podcast.
Nicely done.
Which our podcast is now just geek oriented. That's basically it. But yeah, I didn't get up to much during New Year's, and we were just mostly family stuff.
Yeah, although after Christmas and New Year's, I had massive changeover. As Connor has mentioned, I have changed houses. Not the only thing I've changed jobs as well.
Can you tell them what you work in now?
No.
Okay.
But it is a far more relaxing
Eric
job for me.
is working for the CIA. He's a secret agent.
This is New Zealand.
And he's about to be murdered.
Hey, no, this is New Zealand. If we have to mention anyone, it's the GCSB.
You could be working internationally as a spy
Or
for the CIA.
maybe wherever the MI6 building is, because it's one of those buildings out in Wellington.
Really?
Someone mentioned it to me.
Okay.
MI6 took over one of the business buildings, and I have no idea which one it is. So MI6, if you're listening, hey, I know where you live.
And now I see a red dot on Eric's head, and I'm a little bit concerned.
Ladies and gentlemen, he can't see a red dot. Everything is closed up.
All right. Well,
all right, but anyway, so I've moved houses, changed jobs, doing something a bit more relaxing. Now I'm back in Wellington. I am like literally in central Wellington, so I'll be much closer to everything else.
both of us are actually now in central Wellington.
Pretty much. So we can basically walk to each other's homes if we want to, instead of Connor having to pay however much money every single time to take the train.
I paid would have been $10 every time to come
Jesus.
see it. Yeah.
There we go. Save some money. I'm saving some money by not driving my car because my workplace.
If you came out to mine, it would be $40. When I was living in the hut, it would have been like $40 for you to come see me all the time.
What? That is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. New Zealand train and bus services.
Yeah.
Aren't they lovely?
But what this does mean as well is if we do an event here in Wellington or something, we're not that far from it.
No.
So
especially from Westpac Stadium.
Yeah, and we could probably, we're both in the city. I've done more like open mics and stuff recently over the time, and that's been pretty good. I started busking. I don't know if I mentioned that to you last time I saw you.
What's busking?
You don't know what busking is? You go out and you perform like on the street for money.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah. I thought you were going to say like, isn't that just begging?
No, I wasn't. Oh, no, it's not begging.
It is kind of begging. It's begging with a guitar if you have some, and if you have some skill, then it's not really busking.
Would you like to say that to the kind old Chinese guy who plays on his Chinese instruments so well? It's just beautiful.
Yeah, the guy plays on the erhu.
I don't actually see him that often. Maybe once.
I see him all the time. You just got to go through the train station. You see him all the time.
Oh, okay, then that's
where he
is.
mostly plays, and that's good foot traffic. You get a lot of foot traffic there.
Although I guess he moved out from the city because there's a lot of construction there now.
He still does it from time to time in the city, but his main spot is always in the train station.
Okay.
Because you get more money there. You get more people coming through.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but I basically went out. I probably at some point should get an amp or something because I'm just playing acoustically, no mic or anything.
Nice.
Just.
Oh yeah. Speaking of which, I'll be looking for a guitar myself as well.
Yeah,
I can play one.
I'll be out. But I've been doing that, and I made $2 on one of the days after 2 hours. And then I did another 2 hours this week, and I made $10. So that wasn't too bad.
Nice.
Yeah, some kid came and they liked what I was doing. So I was just like, yep. They gave me $10, and I played for another 10 minutes.
Nice.
So yeah, it was kind of fun. So I've been doing that. As far as geeky stuff, I've been I've been watching the Bruce Lee movies for this thing that we're going to talk about with Bruce Lee.
And I haven't been.
I showed you some clips before.
Yeah, but not the... Well, I mean, do we pay attention to the main story of Bruce Lee?
We'll get into that. So I did that, and...
Sorry, I meant the main story in the movies.
We'll get into that. So I did that, and then I also, as well as that, I've been still watching... Keeping up with One Piece, still watching all that when it comes out.
You have more patience than me to do that.
Well, I'm mostly reading it now at this point. I'm just reading it.
Again, you have more patience than I do.
So I've been doing that, and then also I've been watching the new Beastar that came out. The first 2 episodes are out now, so watch that. That's been good. Another show, I think we're going to need to talk about this show. We're going to need to figure out some way I can talk about. I think we could just talk about why it's special because it's a first in anime I've ever seen, which is it's a skateboarding anime. And I know you're going to say, hey, isn't Air Gear a skating anime? And no, that's a roller skates sort of thing.
No, I know what you meant. Like
but this one
right?
is skateboarding, actual skateboarding. It has some obviously like anime,
Also,
crazy jumps and stuff.
I was gonna mention ice skating, but then I remembered, oh, that's Yuri
It's
on
different.
ice.
It's different.
Yuri
This is
on ice
actual
exists.
skating, and we may do it. And it may be. I think my brother wanted to be on this show at one point, and he's a skater, so it may be an excuse to have him on at some point. So we may talk about the show. I'm 2 episodes in, and we may give it. I may give it a third. I've finally actually, like everybody else, watched Mandalorian. I put off watching that for ages. And I watched the first episode, and I'll try watching the other episodes. And I've sort of enjoyed it. I'm not the biggest Star Wars nerd here. That would be more probably Erik than me. I'm a bit. I'm not really. I didn't watch them as a kid, like raised on them. It was more just like I had a friend that liked them, and he invited me out to go see the first one. And by the first one, I mean the first one, not like the 1970s ones. I mean the first one of Jar Jar Binks. Like that was my first Star Wars movie. Then when saw the second one, thought it was crap, and then when saw the third one, third one was okay.
Yeah, my first Star Wars movies was the the order it was
prequels.
actually released in. So, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, then Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones.
You didn't see them in my order then. I saw them like 1, 2, 3, and then I saw the.
No, I saw them in the order that they were released in.
Okay, see, I saw them in like the order they would. I saw the prequels first, and then the new one, like the old ones.
No, I saw the
Yeah, Eric's a little bit older than me, but not by much. But
so no, I wasn't there when they first came out. Okay,
but your parents might have raised you on them, or
hell no,
brother or someone in your family.
No way. None of us knew anything about Star Wars way back. At least I don't remember anything about Star
Were they
Wars.
allowed in Russia? Were they allowed in Russia?
I mean, they allowed Disney. The two things I remember about growing up in where I was and the media we had was mostly Disney.
Yep.
And PS2 video games.
Okay.
Which were epic.
That Russian mouse in the house.
No, there was one. It was an Apache helicopter game. I remembered it, but I can't remember the name of it. And it was so fun. You just flew around in an Apache and just killed everybody. It was just like one of those missions in what is it? Ace Combat or something like that. Not Ace Combat. It was another gaming series. But anyway, it was like one of those missions, and you just go around and just blow things up. It was fun, and it was of course pixely. And let's see, what was the best way to describe it?
What, 2D or something?
Yeah, it was a 2D. It was 2D.
I know what you're talking about. I've seen those sort of rail shooters.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been our week. It's been
You mean it's been us since the holidays?
since the holidays, our catch up.
Yeah, it was.
That's what I've been up to. I mean, watching stuff.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a, I wouldn't say chaotic time, but it has been one where we've just been trying to sort out.
We've been busy. I wanted to wait till Erik moved into his house before we recorded this.
Yeah, because unfortunately, moving has always taken too much time.
Yeah.
And there's no one to blame but me because I made the decision, and so I will suffer for it.
So we'll be right back as we get into our discussion on the man, the myth, the legend, Bruce Lee. So we are doing a special today, and I say special. We are talking about why Bruce Lee is special.
Yes.
For this episode. Sorry, I keep on saying special. We're gonna, as I said, these episodes are gonna be why something is special, and we're talking about why Bruce Lee is special.
And we're not gonna talk about it for too long because it's just gonna take way too long to mention why Bruce Lee is special.
Oh, really? Because I got a lot of stuff I can get for.
Well, we'll see. All right, but in any case,
Eric was hoping for a short podcast, and I've got like
I wasn't
a whole
hoping
page
for a
of
short
notes.
podcast. I thought we were doing a short podcast because, yeah, usually when we cover certain topics, it does take a bit too long sometimes for us to cover it all. So, and yeah. But in any
If we
case,
don't cover anything, it's fine. We're going to basically give our view. I've got tons of stuff here. Eric's going to mostly talk about the martial arts stuff from this, because he's a martial artist, obviously. I'm just going to talk about this from a point of view, the fact that I watched these movies as like a teenager, a lot of them, because I like Hong Kong cinema a lot. And you can't really watch Hong Kong cinema without watching Bruce Lee.
And it is one thing to mention that a lot of characters like Bruce Lee have influenced us in some way, shape, or form. And it doesn't even...
maybe not so much me, but maybe more you.
But it didn't even need to be about martial arts either, but it's also about kind of looking at someone and thinking that person, is has so much confidence, or that person is so cool, and you just want to be like him. You don't even need to necessarily be a martial artist to be like Bruce Lee, but being famous and, having the confidence to stand in front of a camera and just do all the things he did would be...
This would be kind of better if one of us, if we had an Asian person on here. I'm not trying to, just because he's also really great for representation at the time as well. When you think about media, like in the West, like with things like The Green Hornet, and when you think of Enter the Dragon, a lot of these movies weren't just, first kung fu, movie co-produced in the West, but also like the first kung fu movie that actually featured someone from Hong Kong doing those martial arts in an American style sort of movie. Those are firsts. Like, those are big firsts.
So over the top violence and stories that usually don't make sense.
I'm gonna give a little bit of information on Bruce Lee. So Bruce Lee's birth name was now I might get this wrong, Lee Jun Fan, and he was originally born in San Francisco's Chinatown. Mm-hmm. And anyone that's seen the show Warrior, like, I don't think that's exactly based on his life, but I would imagine some of that was taken from his experience in San Francisco, because that show is set in San Francisco, Chinatown. And he was born there, and he then was raised in Kowloon. Damn, I'm going to pronounce this wrong. I'm just going to say he was raised in Hong Kong by his father, Lee Hon Chun, who was a Cantonese opera singer. And through his father, he got into the industry.
He was part of a traveling... I think he was a part of a traveling opera act.
All right. Surprised. And as Eric said, that's how he got into the business. And then I'm going to let Eric take over this little part here, except I'm going to mention one thing. So obviously he then went on to be trained in Wing Chun by Ip Man. But before we get into that, I want to mention this, and this is one thing Eric may have not talked about or mentioned. So Bruce Lee, one thing some people don't know about him that I always kind of liked, and you can sort of see it in his fighting style as well. Bruce Lee was actually a really good tango dancer.
I knew that.
Good. Oh, okay. Some people don't know that. So he actually won contests and done that. And if you actually watch, I was talking with Erik about this. I told him I wanted to talk about this. If you watch his footwork, he has definitely incorporated some of that tango movement into his footwork. Some of the bounce, some of just when you look at the way he's not doing a lot of fights, as you see, they get into the stance, and then you have one foot behind the other, and it's sort of a very martial arts looking stance. You look at Bruce's stance, he gets into a position like a dancer. He has his hands up, he looks like he's about to put his hand under someone's waist, put maybe his hand up to grab the other person's hand, and he's got his leg kind of in the way you would do if you're going to move him one back, one forward. And then he sort of moves around a little bit like he's doing a bit of a tango sometimes. Yeah.
If you want to be a good martial artist, one of the things anyone should ever try and do is take up dancing. Yeah. I will say this with no shame. When I was younger, way back before I arrived in New Zealand, I did a little bit of ballet.
Oh, I've done it too.
Oh, did you actually?
Yeah. Dude, I did 10... Jeez, we're going to have to get into this now. I did 10 years of drama.
I knew that.
10 years drama, singing, and dance.
Oof.
So I did it all free, man.
Unfortunately, I didn't do 10 years of ballet, but I did it
It wasn't
anyway.
just ballet; it was like contemporary jazz, ballroom,
But
salsa.
because ballet was a big thing in Russia, and because I grew up in a post-Soviet state, there was still that sort of influence there. So it was still incorporated into schools and all
Yeah,
that.
I'm not judging, man. I can't judge. I wore the black tights and pranced around as well. So
Yeah, I actually don't remember what I used to wear.
Yeah.
But anyway,
But yeah, that's one thing I wanted to mention. One other thing, people know this too. He trained a lot of famous Hollywood celebrities. James Coburn, Steve McQueen, probably one that people now know because they saw Once Upon a Time in China, which in my opinion is not a great portrayal of Bruce Lee. We could maybe get into that in a later time. But he also trained famously Sharon Tate as well, before she, sadly passed. But I'll let Eric get a little bit into Ip Man and how he was trained and stuff like that and the stuff he sort of learned. So, Eric, I'll let you take this part here.
So, I'm not going to get into too much of the history, mostly because I forgot to put down that history somewhere. But I guess just to summarize this, Bruce Lee was trained under one of the original practitioners of Wing Chun, Ip Man, or Yip Man, however you want to pronounce him, and butcher his name. So Ip Man's, just to make a connection, Ip Man's teacher was Yun Cheng, I think that's the correct one, and that was the grandmaster at the time of Wing Chun, and who actually taught Ip Man as one of the students, and other students, one of which actually came to Vietnam and taught Wing Chun there, and inexplicably also taught my teacher, who taught me. So our Wing Chun, so my Wing Chun style that I have learned, came from, I guess you could say, the same family as what Bruce Lee was taught. But Bruce Lee's Wing Chun is fundamentally different, and Ip Man's was also fundamentally different to how he taught Bruce Lee and how Ip Man incorporated it. But I guess just to summarize, I can't even remember when Bruce Lee was taught this, but Bruce Lee was taught Wing Chun. Now, the reason it developed from Wing Chun to
Jeet Kune Do
is essentially, well, I wouldn't say it developed from one to the other. Jeet Kune Do is still essentially Wing Chun, but the development of it was more suited to what, I guess, at the time, Bruce Lee wanted it, because around the area where Bruce Lee was, and I got this noted here as well. It was actually the Wing Chun style Bruce Lee was getting from Ip Man was in conflict with other styles. One of which was a style known as Choi Liu Yut, which is a wushu style kung fu, incorporated from parts of northern and southern China. So that was basically think karate before it became karate. That's what it was like. And this was in conflict. So I think part of the reason that Wing Chun for Bruce Lee developed into Jeet Kune Do was to kind of incorporate it into a style that's as famous as part of his famous phrase, "Be like water, my friend," is to try and create a style that's far more free flowing and much more easily adaptable. Because where I learned Wing Chun is a bit more traditional. It keeps to its roots. It keeps to how it was developed because it always works that way. I think what Bruce Lee was trying to get along with is try and find a style where he just can, I guess, flow like water, where he can shape himself into any way he wants and shape himself into into whatever the situation is. Which is something I still really like, but again, it is in conflict with the traditional Wing Chun style. So right or wrong, Jeet Kune Do is still something we like to train with because we can see.
Yeah, I was gonna say, didn't you say your martial art is kind of like a mixture of like it's a bit of a version of Jeet Kune Do?
So we try and keep things separate, but we also try and see ourselves as practitioners and I guess students of any type of martial arts we can find. Pardon me. So Wing Chun and Jeet Kune Do, those two things we have tried to separate, but still learn because both have their, strengths and weaknesses, and both are great to learn and fight with. Although I'll still keep to Wing Chun more than Jeet Kune Do because with Wing Chun, the fundamental difference there is the traditional way could still work. As you can probably study as if your opponent is a Wing Chun master and you study it, and if you believe that you've fought up every move the person will make, everything they'll ever do, you're completely wrong. And even if you do manage to anticipate,
I now feel like this episode should have just been Wing Chun.
And if you think that sort of style, if you think that sort of style will be something you can easily conquer, think again. With Jeet Kune Do, it's far easier to understand because, as I said, it's free flowing. It's be water, my friend. So, which means just try to be malleable. Try to be a force that cannot be stopped. Try and be something that shapes and changes shape as much as you can. And don't ease. And I guess I can't remember what part of it was, but if you could be the shape you can, based on how you control it. So if you want to be a cup, let the water flow in the cup, and be the cup. Yeah, because I can't exactly remember what the example was about. But
so you're getting a bit into this philosophy. As we know, Bruce Lee was a bit of a philosopher as well. But we watched some clips actually before we did this because I watched all. So Bruce Lee technically did about 4 movies that he made before he died. I know you're like, he did TV shows, he did all this. He did have movies in Hong Kong that he did that weren't kung fu movies, like way before. Those are just dramas. I did not watch any of those because it's hard to actually find stuff of them, like with English subtitles. But I watched all 4 of his main ones, The Big Boss. I didn't watch The Big Boss because I actually saw that last year and I had that fresh in my head. Same with Fist of Fury. That's my favorite, but I just watched bits of it. Yeah. And then I watched Way of the Dragon. I watched Into the Dragon, which technically, that's 4. And then I watched Game of Death, which is technically not really a Bruce. It's half of a Bruce Lee movie. Basically, Bruce Lee died halfway through the making of it. He had filmed parts of it while he was a little bit before Enter the Dragon. And then after this movie was made, they wanted more Bruce Lee. So Raymond Chow is one of the head producers of Golden Harvest, who produced all of Bruce Lee's movies. He basically decided we need another movie. They got the director from Enter the Dragon. Hollywood was also like, we need other, Bruce Lee stuff. So, and the audience was like asking for it. So they made Game of Death and they basically used footage from that Bruce Lee had filmed. And then they got some Korean guy, I can't remember his name, who could do Bruce Lee's style reasonably okay. I say reasonably because it's nowhere near as good as Bruce Lee's. No. But they also got now I might butcher this, but I'm going off of a guy who does a lot. I can't remember, but I'm going off Bay Logan, who does a lot of the commentaries for a lot of Hong Kong movies. Yun Biao, who you may know, he's the guy who's he's been in a lot of Jackie Chan's movies, a lot of Sammo Hung's movies. He's had his own movies. He's one of the 3 sort of big kung fu guys from the 80s. He was the stunt double for Bruce with all his with all his flips and kicks, all his acrobatic stuff for Game of Death, where and basically this movie, like, there's only about maybe 30 minutes that's actually Bruce Lee, and it's filmed completely differently. It's filmed in a different location. And in the rest of the movie, they literally used like not cardboard cutouts, but they used like cutouts of Bruce's face, put them on the actor. I'm not kidding with this stuff. They used some
I don't even
archival.
remember that.
They used some archival footage. At one
Wow.
point, they just literally showed his footage of his funeral because his character like fake dies in the movie. So they just showed his actual death in the movie.
That's
It's extremely disrespectful, obviously.
it's one of the things I am thinking about.
So not my favorite of all of them. And then after that, they did a ton of knockoff Bruce Lee movies with multiple different Bruces. So they had Bruce Lee with like L-I, Bruce Lee with like L-Y, Bruce Liu, like just multiple different versions of that.
I think I remember those.
Yeah.
Those were
It's called like Bruce Exploitation or something.
sounds about right.
And Jackie Chan was even going to be at one point one of these because he was in a movie called New Fist of Fury. I believe that's what it's called. And that movie was my first ever kung fu movie. I saw it in its English dub, which was really badly edited. It has like one of my favorite bad edits where a guy like goes to punch another guy and then all of a sudden he's like on the other side of the room jumping at the guy. It makes no sense. It's a terrible movie, even in its original. Like, I'm kind of nostalgic for it, but it isn't a great movie. And they were basically trying to mold Jackie into the next Bruce. He didn't obviously want to do that, but he had a contract at the time with Lo Wei, and Lo Wei is the director of Fist of Fury and a number of other movies. And he basically forced Jackie into this contract where he wanted to morph him as the next Bruce, do a ton of movies of him. And Lo Wei, as I said, he also did Big Boss, which was Bruce Lee's first big movie. And Lo Wei's a good director, but maybe not the nicest person. He seems kind of like an Orson Welles type, or at least he wanted to be. He even plays that sort of character, like in a couple of his movies. There's a famous Orson Welles detective character in one of Orson Welles' movies, and he sort of played that role in Fist of Fury and Fist of Fury 2, the new one as well. But yeah, they basically tried to remake it with Jackie, and he didn't really want to do that. So then he would later on go do his own thing. But yeah, they did a ton of this. America also did this actually. They literally took the Green Hornet and they took clips from the TV show and like deleted scenes and tried to morph that into a movie. Not kidding, this is a real thing.
I mean, I know you'd be desperate for something like that, but at least put a bit more effort into it.
Yeah.
The Martial Arts Club YouTube channel actually sounds like it does more effort into their stuff than whatever the hell these guys did.
But yeah, so I watched all of them, and I'm going to talk a little bit about them. So we've talked a lot about Game of Death, so let's keep going with that. So as I said, Game of Death is a bit of a sloppy mess. But if we just talk about the Bruce Lee stuff in there, it's great. There's a really good fight with, now I might get his name wrong, Dan Inosanto. Now, this is the Filipino guy with the sticks that I showed you before, Eric.
Yep.
And Eric, I'll let you talk about his style and what did you think of the fight?
I thought it was kind of hard to really give the guy any sort of credit, considering he is on the ass-kicking end of Bruce Lee.
But he had a very particular style we were talking about.
Yeah, it's a Filipino style called Saliente?
Salet or something.
Salet, yeah.
Silet.
Yeah. So it is a style. I don't know. Don't remember if it originally came from Philippines, but it was developed there. So it is a style. It is a style that closely would resemble, I guess more Kenpo and karate than anything. And it does involve beating the crap out of people with two short sticks, which definitely works. And so I think at one point I tried it out, but it's definitely rather difficult because using these sticks, you'd have to kind of find some sort of balance between them to use. And it's already, it's a cool idea from the start to use two weapons at the same time, but you'll quickly find how difficult it actually is, because unless you're ambidextrous, and I mean perfectly ambidextrous, it's going to be kind of hard to coordinate between your right and left hand to try and do this. Because naturally, when we're fighting, if we're right-handed, our left hand will be our shield, our right hand will be our attack. Or, the other way around, depending on how people feel. But that's generally how I've always done it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when it comes to the Filipino style, you have to incorporate both your hands into attack and defense. So one can't be the other all the time. You have to use both at the same time. That's the difficult part of it. Because you try and imagine using both your hands to attack and then quickly switching to defense. Without going into that habit of left defense, right attack.
And Erik just hit his mic.
No, I didn't. Shut up.
All right. But that fight is generally pretty good, except for one filmmaking thing I talked about with Erik, where there's these cuts where they just cut to them swinging the martial art, like swinging the nunchuck, because they have a nunchuck fight halfway through, and they're just swinging the nunchuck at the camera, and they're just doing stuff to the camera. It looks kind of cool, but at the same time, there's like no impact. It just looks kind of silly. And you can't really tell that two guys are like, it's meant to kind of look like two guys are blocking each other's hits, but it just looks kind of silly.
You told me that pissed you off a lot.
So we'll talk about the second fight in this, which is when we're talking about all the fights that take place in the tower. This is all the stuff that Bruce Lee filmed. So the second fight is the Hapkido fight with, I'm going to maybe get this wrong, Jihan Jai, and he is as I talked about, Hapkido master. What did you think of this fight? This is probably one of my favorites. I thought like the grapples.
It was definitely a better fight than whatever happened previously with the Filipino guy. Because I think, when you have an opponent that's confident in that, well, I don't want to say arrogant, just that confident in their own style and their own way of fighting, you clearly know someone is going to get an ass kicking. And even if you create a story where Bruce Lee's always going to be the winner, when you have a character who at least challenges him, makes you believe, oh no, is Bruce Lee going to win?
Yeah, there were times I was like, I don't know if Bruce Lee's going to actually win this. Yeah. Like he's actually getting his ass kicked in a couple of times.
I think this Hapkido fighter, I already forgot his name. I think he did it pretty well, especially with how he fought. And who's Bruce Lee's friends in that scene?
So one of them was we thought maybe might be a karate master. I can't remember his name. But the second guy who's there, we're going to get into another territory almost with this. So this is a guy who's been in all his movies, and they put him with Bruce Lee because what they were going to do is this guy was more famous at the time. Like he was going to be, they reckoned he was going to be the big star, and Bruce Lee wasn't. And this guy's called James Chan. He's been in a bunch of kung fu movies, and his first movie is with Bruce as the big boss, but he had already done some other movies. And they basically thought Bruce is going to be, his psychic for all of them. He's going to be the big fighter. No, James Chan ends up getting outshone most of the time. But he does all right. He gets his ass kicked twice in this movie.
The one thing I'd have to commend him for is just being able to get back up, even after he gets an ass kicking, because that's the whole. That's a great aspect about learning martial arts. Don't just crawl away when you get beaten down once. Just keep getting back up and try again. Yeah. And eventually, this is a good lesson to learn. So I think the guy
James Chan.
Yeah, James Chan. His character, I don't think would be too
what did you
too broken about the fight.
What did you think of like in terms of what Bruce was doing? What did you think? Like about what he was doing during this fight, because there was a couple, he wasn't doing throws, but there was one move he did where he kind of got the guy on the ground and did what I was describing as like a nut hit. Can you describe that a bit more for me?
That is, that's a bit of a weird one, mostly because when I was learning Wing Chun, we've never ever tried to do nut shots. Not because it was like a dishonorable kind of thing, but because there's we found better ways to take someone down other than nut shots. Like, what is it? What do we do? Multiple face punches, throat punches. Let's see, hits to the neck, hits to the center line. The center line being the middle of your body, going from the top of your head down the middle, cutting through your nose, cutting in the middle of your chin, down the middle of your chest, right down to your groin. That center point, of course, avoiding the groin area.
Yep.
But I think what he did was just doing a what is it? I guess a backwards elbow, which is done, which is still in the style. It's still in the style of Wing Chun. You do elbows in Wing Chun, but you never really do them that low. I think it's done purely because either Bruce Lee likes it or because for visually.
Not the first time he's done a nut hit.
For maybe a more visually appealing thing, but you don't really need to hit anyone with Wing Chun or Jeet Kune Do in the nuts, since both styles incorporate.
That guy didn't get up for a while though after that.
Yeah, because both styles incorporate ways and techniques where you can hit someone anywhere but the nuts, and they'll probably hurt just as much.
We'll get on to the last fight, and then we'll wrap up this movie, and then we'll get on to Way of the Dragon. So the other fight, the major fight that everybody knows about, and this fight, even footage of this fight was used in City Hunter, the Jackie Chan movie. He even does like some of the same moves as Bruce in like a fight. But Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the famous basketball player.
Yeah.
What did you? I thought he really used his height and his legs like quite well. Obviously, he
You mean being twice the height of Bruce Lee?
But he obviously knew he would have his big legs. He knew he obviously should put a lot of strength there and use that as his advantage.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
That's the one thing. Guys like him have an advantage over.
He's got more distance, wouldn't he, with the long legs? I'd think.
He doesn't even need to use his legs. His what is it? His what's his face? Just his hands alone would give him better distance. But unfortunately, I think if he kept using his legs, he would have gotten a better chance, because you don't want a little guy like Bruce Lee to dodge your strikes with your hands and then get under you, because that would mean, how do I put this? That would mean he just gets into your blind spots or gets inside of you. Because once you have your arm out like this and you want to bring it back, it'd be a bit too late, because the guy would have already come in and used the force and momentum. Use the force and momentum to come forward and strike you.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing that all martial arts should use, which is a person's own momentum and their own weight thrown forward with their own strikes.
So I think this is quite a good fight. I think the biggest thing that to take away from this is the fact that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar seems to like. I've seen a lot of Bruce's other students, like Sharon. I've actually seen the movie Sharon Tate fighting, and it's nowhere near as good as Kirk. Like, clearly he's not holding back. Bruce isn't holding back. They're having a proper fight.
Yeah,
like it's
and
great.
somehow it went from a Jeet Kune Do fight to a judo fight. Or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
It's got a bit of mixed in there, as you know. Jeet Kune Do has some mixed martial arts in it.
Yeah, but not to that extent. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm pretty sure Bruce Lee must have gotten bored and just went, you know what? I've been doing Jeet Kune Do for who knows how many years. Let's switch it up a bit.
Hey, no accents. So what
accent?
We're gonna get into. So I'm going to talk a little. I'm going to try to rush through some of these because I got a lot of notes on Way of the Dragon and a lot of notes on Enter the Dragon. Way of the Dragon was used to be my least favorite movie, but we'll get into why it's not my least favorite. As I said, Game of Death now is probably my least favorite. But first, I want to just talk about Big Boss just a little bit. Big Boss was Bruce Lee's first major Hong Kong movie. It's really good, solid movie. It's actually probably the most complicated story-wise. Like you were talking about a little bit in the first half of our podcast, how Bruce's movies, you focus more on the fights. This one actually has quite a bit of a story. It's all about Bruce Lee coming over to Thailand and then working with his friends and family, and then getting finding out about this corruption, about these guys who essentially are trying to do a drug smuggle sort of thing, drug smuggling, prostitution, all sorts of shit. And they're doing it through these ice that they're pushing through in this mill. And basically what ends up happening is like when they find someone who's trying to rat on them, they basically kill them and then hide their body parts in these ice. Bruce Lee and like one of his friends stumble upon this. And Bruce then like they basically to silence him, instead of killing him off, they get him drunk, they hook him up with like a hooker, and then they make him look real shit to the rest of his friends, and they kind of corrupt him. And I think that like is really interesting because Bruce's characters in most of the movies, he doesn't really tend to have like any major flaws. This movie, he has this major flaw where, you know, he's obviously a guy, he gets drunk pretty well, you know, all this, and he does get a bit like, he does forget about some of the major issues because it's just like, oh, I get tea, you know, and for a short time he doesn't really notice the stuff. But at the end of the movie, obviously, he comes to his senses. And what I like about this, and you kind of see this in Fist of Fury as well, is Bruce fighting, like, and he's not rewarded for fighting in these movies. He's never, at the end of the movie, the hero. He gets arrested at the end of Big Boss. And then in Fist of Fury, which is all about him taking revenge for like the Japanese coming in and essentially making fun of his master, he essentially goes and beats the shit out of these guys and then murders like one of the guys at the end of the movie and of course gets like gunned down. He basically dies at the end of the movie in a pretty infamous scene. And one thing, actually funny thing I gotta mention just with that movie alone is that's like, you watch Big Boss and you watch that, you kind of realize that all Bruce Lee movies are mostly about revenge, and every single one of them is Bruce Lee versus some country. So Bruce Lee versus Thailand, Bruce Lee versus Japan, Bruce Lee versus America and Way of the Dragon, or Bruce Lee versus Roman America if you want to really get into it. And then Bruce Lee versus China, and then the last one is Bruce Lee is dead. You know, it's not even
Bruce Lee versus death.
Yeah. So and Fist of Fury is great. Fist of Fury has one of my favorite movie deaths where Bruce Lee is like beating up this guy and he grabs his sword and he goes to fight him, and Bruce is having none of this. Bruce Lee hits the sword up in the air. The guy is like going to go attack him. Bruce Lee grabs him, pulls him in so that the sword that's flying up in the air can swing down and stab the guy in the stomach. And then Bruce is like, well, that's not enough. That's clearly not going to kill him. So he still like goes for a hard-ass punch and just punches the guy in slow motion across the room.
Yes, the very rare slow motion scenes incorporated into Bruce Lee's movies.
Right. So the last two movies I want to get into. Way of the Dragon. Way of the Dragon is... I did not like this movie at first when I saw it. I think
despite the fact that Chuck Norris and him fight each other?
I think that was the reason why, because the Chuck Norris fight is a little bit cheesy looking. And I thought it was shot by a green screen. It's actually not. It just looks that bad. I'm not kidding. It's like, it's not it's an okay fight. It's not bad. There's parts of it I don't like. But I got it mixed up a bit with New Fist of Fury as well. There's parts of that I got mixed, and other Chuck Norris movies that I'd seen. So I remember not liking it, but then I watched it this time, and it's shot surprisingly well. Bruce Lee directed this movie as well as writing it and starring in it. It's the first movie he did this in, and the movie is shot in Rome, so you get to see a lot of cool shots of Roman stuff. And it's mostly about him being like a fish out of water in Rome. But what I like is, like, unlike a lot of American fish out of water stories, it's not Bruce Lee's this Asian guy and he's a fish out of water in America and he's being led around by this American person. No, it's Bruce Lee is the guy from the countryside. He's a martial artist. And he comes in, and Nora Meow, who I had the biggest crush on when I was a teenager, first saw her for the first time.
All right, I'm not going to judge. I had a crush on Lucy Liu.
She in most of the Fist of the Fury movies had like these terrible wigs, and she was usually like not much personality, kind of like the shy, timid crush. Yeah. This movie, she gets to be like a spunky, yippy, hippie sort of girl, and she shows Bruce around Rome, and she like knows how to speak English, and she's a city girl. And basically, like, it's about him being a fish out of water, not being able to speak English. Some of it, I think, is actually based off his own experience. There's one scene that I think hits kind of hard, where he's just standing waiting for someone, and this old lady will not stop looking at him, just keeps on looking at him, and you kind of think he's probably had this happen to him. Like he's probably had some weird lady look at him just because.
And I like the scene after she leaves. He's just like breathes out, going, like, oh, thank God. And I thought to myself, the thing he must be thinking is, oh, thank God, this crazy white lady's gone.
So one thing I was trying to hold, I showed Erik clips from Way of the Dragon, and the fights are really great because you get to see a lot of different, like his different martial arts, not just the Jeet Kune Do typical style. You get to see like traditional, like you were talking about, like kung fu.
Yeah.
And you get to see other styles of like fighting. He uses like a staff at one point, like doing staff style and using nunchucks.
Style.
He does dual nunchucks. Is the only movie he does that in.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah. So I love that. But the thing I have to bring up.
If I have to mention one thing, Bruce Lee using a staff.
Yeah.
I think it was, I can't remember what length it was, but if it was a 6-foot staff, then that is part of the
part of Wing Chun as well?
That is part of the Wing Chun curriculum.
Wouldn't surprise me.
So Wing Chun curriculum mostly uses 2 types of weapons, which are double short swords.
Yeah.
And ones which are called butterfly swords and are hella cool.
Yeah.
Pirate weapons, by the way. And 6-foot pole.
I think it was that. He basically uses like a staff thing, like a big long pole.
Yeah, those are one of the only two. Those are 2 of the main weapons used for Wing Chun style.
2 things that make this movie a little bit. It was fun to watch, but it was a little bit bad and cheesy, but also kind of fun in a way. So the music is by, I think this is a Joseph Coe sound. So Joseph Coe did most of the music for Bruce's movies, and his soundtracks are good, but sometimes a little bit cheesy. There's music. It doesn't help that the goons in this movie look like they just walked out of West Side Story. Like they're very unintimidating, metrosexual looking dudes who look like they're about to break into a dance number. There's literally one guy in this movie that actually looks like a 70s like Italian mobster. The rest look like they're about to like do a dance number. You know, they look like they're about to go, gotta rock it in your pocket. Get cool. You know, they look like they're about to do West Side Story numbers.
Or and
then the music doesn't help because the music
sounds like closer to Grease.
Yeah, well, West Side Story was around this time as well, so it wouldn't surprise me. This movie's also, I believe, the cinematographer for this. I can't remember his name, but he's a Japanese cinematographer. And Bruce actually has said something about how Japanese movies do very good cinematography. This movie does actually stand out. It looks different from other Hong Kong movies. And it looks good, like in a couple places. There's a couple places where I was like, and I don't mean the grain of the film, but like the Chuck Norris fight that we were talking about, there's bits where Bruce is cutting to like a cat or something that's not really relevant to the fight, and it kind of takes you out of the fight a little bit. But
what do you mean? Don't you know that cat was a previous master?
And the ending has the ending goes on a little bit longer than it should. But other than that, there's some good moments in this, some good fights. Really good to see Nora actually like get to act and do some stuff. I enjoyed this movie way more than I did last time. So now to get into the Dragon. Into the Dragon is probably like Bruce's last real movie that he actually got involved in, and it's quite a cast in this movie because it was Jim Kelly's first movie, and Jim Kelly was like basically going to become the next big thing for blaxploitation, like him and Dolomite and all that sort of thing. And he's great in it. He's a great fighter, and
until something bad happens to him halfway through the movie.
Yeah, well,
was it halfway through the movie?
I think that might be some of the American producers going, we can't have a black lead in this movie, or we can't have too many.
Which I found to be quite disappointing because I thought he'd be the.
Well, might just be to show how evil Mr. Han is. He's kind of a very, this movie's very like James Bond like. There's a lot of sneaking around, espionage. There's a lot of like, Mr. Han even has a cat at one point. It's like, you're just trying to do Blofeld for James Bond. Like, he's even stroking the cat with his claw hand.
And the secret weapons stored around that he can use.
Yeah, and then he's got he's got this secret island. This was the first movie to have like a big tournament island thing, which obviously influenced heaps of stuff. Mortal
Yeah.
Kombat being like a freaking obvious example. The whole plot of that was like, taken mostly from this movie. But Jim Kelly's great in this. Bruce obviously gets to do a lot more than just fighting in this. A lot of like, as I said, being kind of a spy. And he's great in this. And John Saxon, who some people may or may not know, he's the one white dude in this movie. Apparently, he was really famous around this time and around some of the other movies he did. I think he was in a lot of westerns. I've never seen any of his movies outside of Black Christmas, which is what I know him for, and A Nightmare on Elm Street. He's the cop / dad in A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh yeah.
So that's probably what most people know him for. But in this, he's a martial artist. I think he's a karate expert or something who's got a bit of a gambling debt. Mr. Han tries to recruit him and
of course.
kills his only friend, Jim Kelly, who was like his Vietnam buddy. The movie's a little bit cheesy and hokey in places, but there's some great fights. Obviously, the mirror fight is iconic. What did you think of Enter the Dragon when you saw it for the first time?
Oh, I gotta tell you, that had some pretty fantastic fights in it before the Mr. Han fight. I think the Mr. Han fight was the least favorite one of mine.
It's probably my favorite, like the one with the mirror and them clashing at each other. Like,
Nah.
you see so much influence in that on different things.
Yeah, and that's one thing I like about it. But I think some of the fights in the tournament, especially against the undercover agent, that's some of the ones I liked because that's the build up. That's what helps build up fights and build up situations in movies like that.
What did you think of the Sammo Hung fight at the first part of the movie, where they've got the gear on and they're having do you not remember Sammo Hung? He's in the first fight in the movie.
Oh, I can't even remember.
He does
that
a bunch
fight.
of flips and stuff. It's pretty good.
Oh, I'd have to rewatch it because I can't remember.
By the way, so we talked about Yun Biao being his stunt double for Game of Death. For this movie and every other movie that Bruce does a flip in, that's, I believe, it is Yun Hua for all these other movies. Now, Yun Hua, you may know the name, you may not know the name. He is a bad guy in like a lot of 80s Hong Kong movies. You would know his face straight away. And he was one of Bruce's friends, and he was in a lot of these doing flips. And
you will be my friend in real life and my enemy in the movies.
He is in Fist of Fury as a Japanese person at one point that doesn't let Bruce Lee in because he's Chinese.
Yeah, of course.
And what's funny is he beats him up, and then basically if you look closer, you're like, wait. He beat him up, and then he's out of the scene, and then Bruce does a flip, and then that's clearly Yun Hua again doing the flip for him. So it's kind of funny.
Oh.
But Bruce Lee, as we've talked about, is this amazing, influential figure who had a major impact on martial arts, but also just on media in general. So I'm just going to list a couple things, obviously, that he's been in. So just for some animation things that I could think of, Spike from Cowboy Bebop obviously uses Jeet Kune Do. Rock Lee, freaking obvious reference.
And just going off of that, Cowboy Bebop fight from the Cowboy Bebop movie, that train fight, that has influence, or rather, that's been a carbon copy of the fight for Naruto versus Neji during the preliminaries.
Yeah. But then also Kenshiro being like a really, really obvious example. And then a lot of people don't realize, but Dragon Ball was also heavily influenced by Bruce Lee. Jackie Chan as well. Like Jackie Chan was, into the Monkey King and all that. But apparently Dragon Ball is taken from one of the Dragon movies that Bruce Lee did. And then also there is a Bruce Lee character in Dragon Ball who Goku beats up. Also, I think, I don't know which character, but I'm pretty sure one of like either Tien or Yamcha are Bruce Lee influenced.
I think it was
maybe Tien. I'm trying to remember, but one of them definitely is. And then of course you've got of course you've got Chie from Persona 4. That's one people may not think of, but that is one. But one I am people might be surprised of is there is an episode of SpongeBob that is basically Game of Death. I'm not kidding. Where Sandy wears like the yellow costume, she goes up the ladder and fights a bunch of people. I remember seeing it. I was like, what the hell? They're doing a Game of Death parody in a SpongeBob episode. And then, of course, there's like a number of movies, Kill Bill being like the bloody obvious one.
Oh my God.
Yeah, there's a ton of them. But then if you just go through video games, there's so many video games that had a Bruce Lee character in them, basically. So you got Virtual Fighter, Tekken, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, DOA, UFC 2. So, you know, which was obviously Bruce Lee had a major effect on the UFC. And then, and then you've got, of course, all those anime influence stuff that had video games as well.
Let's not name anime because we'd be here the whole night.
Yeah.
But I guess we have to name any. You know, going back, Cowboy Bebop would be.
Yeah, but dozens of anime, dozens of even just some other cartoons and stuff as well. Loads and loads of video games. We obviously mentioned Mortal Kombat. Liu Kang is obviously a Bruce Lee influence, and the whole plot of Mortal Kombat is clearly influenced by Enter the Dragon.
Yeah, pretty much.
But any final thoughts on Bruce Lee, Eric?
There's definitely a lot of talk about his own style, you know, and we've had our debates about how useful, how effective his style is, but at the end of the day, it is something. It is the philosophy behind his fighting that we use almost as much as his fighting itself. So if anyone wants to, they can always go for any of Bruce Lee's written notes and texts that have been put together into book form. You'll be able to find these and you'll be able to have a look at some of the things he thought about as a way to teach yourself or be taught Jeet-Kune-Do.
I also think you can't deny how much effect he had on how people fight, and not just Kung, but just movies in general. Like going forward, fights got a lot more aggressive, fights got a lot more faster, a lot more impact. It was just a whole, because you go back and you watch like the original Wong Fei-Hong movies from like the 50s and 60s. They are really slow and really stage combat-y. You watch every fight after Bruce Lee, everybody got a lot faster, everybody got a lot rougher, not just in Hong Kong, but in Hollywood as well. He had a massive effect on film. So this has been our episode of Alternating with Eric on why Bruce Lee is special. And if you want to hit us up on social media, you can check us out on Instagram. That is me at Insert Connor here. If you want to see any of my posts for these episodes and my art or other things, that's where I post stuff. We do have a Twitter called InsertCast, which I used to post episodes there. Don't even use that.
I can't even remember you having a Twitter.
So we have a Facebook page. Eric, tell them what it is.
Yes, it's Alternating with Erik, as well as a Spotify page with the same name.
Yep. And we also have a YouTube page where we put Let's Plays up. We hopefully will have a Hitman Let's Play that's coming to you guys. It will either be out before this episode or after this episode.
We'll have it out. Don't worry about it.
We'll have it out. And we're going to do a couple. So I'm going to announce this now because we're going to do an episode on it at some point. So we are, at some point, I want to play Snatcher with Erik, and I want to play at least one of the Silent Hill games of Erik, because we are going to do an episode on Akira Yamaoka, because as a part of my degree, when I was doing an engineering degree, sound engineering degree, I actually did a presentation on the music in Silent Hill and the sound design in Silent Hill 2, to be exact. So I am definitely going to use what I studied from that in this podcast. So that is going to be coming up at some point. But until then, we'll catch you guys later.
See ya.